Asphalt Watches. This Canadian crackfest is a deceptively pretentious, low-budget, funky and fugly rehash of early 2000 flash animation, which is covering up an equally misguiding love letter to Marcel Duchamp and Dada, which is also defacing the very art of cinema to drown the audience in a vehemently venomous, lambasting and almost incomprehensible allegory about the first 10 years of the new millennium, with all its idiosyncrasies, directionless life routes, and utter chaos. This was the kind of anti-artistic, anti-cinematic statement that forced me to do something that I rarely ever do. I watched it twice. The first time I hated it, then I thought about it all day, and finally, after the second viewing, I was convinced it was actually brilliant. I may very well be the only one outside of Canada to believe that. Oh well. The Fake. You'd be hard-pressed to find a more bleak, nihilistic and violently profound critique on the topics of organized religion, human nature and the very concept of faith than South Korean animated feature, The Fake. An unapologetically torturous apologue on mankind's self-destructive ways that comes from South Korea? Who would have ever seen that coming? Yes, watching this film will be a test for both the mind and the stomach, but the experience alone is worth it. Grand Budapest Hotel. Wes Anderson is a modern-day Jean Renoir, a genius director capable of both capturing and glorifying the fictitious nature of cinema while celebrating its ability to feel genuine and quote-unquote real. Grand Budapest Hotel is another brilliant example of his continued formal and artistic efforts, yet again a film filled with overly fake sets, objects, prop materials and even actors, filling specific carefully constructed spots and places in its painfully constructed diegesis, which clearly served the purpose of pointing out the fictional aspect of the medium. Then the film's materials, the characters that is, spring into a life of their own not in spite of the fiction but because of it, thus conveying the most sincere and human performances they could possibly achieve, downright empowered by the contrast with the obviously fake nature of their setting. It's a meta-textual deconstruction of the cinematic art and a celebration of it as a glorious representation of life and humanity. So, like I said, Wes Anderson is very much like an updated version of Jean Renoir in that thematic regard. His films tend to share this very specific style, becoming more and more pronounced at every new release. But they still come across as very unique experiences in their own right. On that note, go watch Moonrise Kingdom when you have the time, or any of his works really. You'll thank me later. Box Trolls. My only problem with the Studio Leica's latest stop-motion masterpiece lies in that minor controversy associated with the cross-dressing habits of the main villain, which served the purpose of denoting his lack of self-acceptance and his desire for self-escape, a negative connotation according to the film's themes. The problem is that cross-dressing is, in actuality, the exact opposite of whatever negative meaning Box Trolls wanted to use it for. It's in fact one of the highest forms of self-celebration to be found in the world, not a way to deny one's true nature. Regardless, I cannot in good faith blame the makers of this film for a sadly common misconception that's yet to be purged from a mainstream mentality, and aside from that head-scratching element, the film itself is still very much stupendous. Not as good as Paranorman, but indubitably creative and fun. Edge of Tomorrow. On the surface, what sold this Hollywood adaptation of a Japanese light novel to me was its very own premise. It's Groundhog Day with alien monsters and combat exoskeletons. If you look at it on a deeper level though, you might be able to find the cinematic redemption of fallen actor Tom Cruise, acting his heart out of a role seemingly manufactured for him, being the story of a scumbag of a man turning into a redeemable action hero and a decent human being through many trials and tribulations involving his repeated death. If that isn't an accurate metaphor for his flushed career and very much hopeful recovery, nothing is. Overall, this was a dreadfully underrated summer action flick. Equestria Girls, Rainbow Rocks. Please excuse me as I indulge in my own amused disbelief for finding myself really enjoying a film designed to promote a toy sub-franchise meant to be Hasbro's answer to the popularity of Monster High. I have been a fan of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic since 2011, and while I wasn't bashing on the first humanized iteration of the franchise in the original Equestria Girls, I also wasn't sold on it, since it was kind of a train wreck. On the other hand, the sequel did everything right for me. Great soundtrack, vibrant colors, lighting and shading, a legitimate character arc for former villain Sunset Shimmer, now promoted into full-fledged protagonist, an alluringly entertaining trio of new antagonists, and overall top-notch flesh animation, even though when you compare it to the likes of a Disney-budgeted CGI, it will still look like a novelty toy that at best can barely get above TV quality. Nevertheless, the fact that it managed to make its narrative work in spite of the terribly risky premise of an all-girls music band, something that, to my knowledge, has never, ever, ever been any good, running completely wild with it and culminating in a showdown right out of Scott Pilgrim, makes me personally really happy. In the end, that's what Rainbow Rocks is all about to me. A fantastic validation for the longtime fans of the franchise and the closest thing we'll ever get to a spiritual sequel to Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which happens to be one of my favorite films of all time. How could I not love this? Big Hero 6. Big Hero 6 is to comic books and anime what Wreck-It Ralph was to video games. A passionate tribute that oozes with contagious fun and deeply emotional catharsis. All I could feel watching this was joy. Pure, unbridled joy filling in a cup of childlike glee and shameless dorkiness. It's like Astro Boy meeting the Avengers and having a party in my heart. The setting alone is genius. More so than the relatively rushed but still solid narrative, to be frank, as it conveys a ton of social commentary on both the applications of scientific progress and modern views over racial interaction without even trying. This definitely feels how the future should be like, and I definitely want to see more of this quirky titled Japanese English sounding superhero task force in years to come. Maybe Baymax's instant fist bump meme is exactly what we need to finally get people to shut up over Frozen. I know it's impossible, but a man can dream. Gone Girl. David Fincher produces a critique on the overbearing presence of mass media in our lives in the cleverly misleading presentation of a psychological thriller wearing the skin of a multifaceted family drama that also involves a critique on the very concept of matrimonies. The power of the media overwhelms the reality of the fact. Twisting it to the point, it becomes the commonly accepted reality. The filtered image of the truth becomes the truth, and the real truth turns out to be too horrifying to be accepted. The facade of the media circus finds itself a perfect parallel with the facade of marriage, as in both facades end up overpowering and effectively replacing the facts in the public eye, which is the only eye that actually counts, one that both influences and is influenced by said facade in a never-ending vicious cycle of fake truths. This film might have the smartest commentary about the effect of mass media on our reality since Brian De Palma's Redacted. It's just really good. Guardians of the Galaxy. The most fun and well-paced summer action blockbuster in decades, the most rich and exploitable sci-fi universe and lore since Star Wars, the best Marvel Studios film so far, it's just the film you wanted to see more than anything else this year. Admit it. And last but not least, the Lego Movie. Everything is awesome.
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. Everything is awesome.